Hey, what up, y'all? I have an update on Lori Vallow. Um, this is a hidden true crime with special guest Ashley Banfield. Let's get into it, shall we? And the title is Should Lori Vallow Daybell be held in contempt of court? Let's go. Come on. Come on. What can I not try this one more time?
So the fact that she thinks just Hello, Hidden Gems. I am so excited for our guest today. I am with the Ashley Banfield. Yes, Ashley Banfield, host of Banfield on News Nation, 10 p.m. Eastern, but also host of the awesome podcast. I have been loving it, Ashley. I'm so excited for Drop Dead Serious. I am loving it. So I am so glad. Yeah, I am so glad to see you now as a fellow podcaster. So thank you for being here. I've always admired you as a broadcaster and the reporting you have done for so many years. Thank you for all of the work you have done. You are a true blue.
I also going to come with some more Lori Daybell stuff tomorrow as well. So stay tuned for that.
On the ground journalist, and now again, like I said, I can also call you a fellow true crime podcaster, and so I am so excited for this conversation we're about to have. Thank you for making time.
Fine, my gosh, right back at you for one, because you know that we do a lot. Like we have you on the show a lot, and I think that the podcasting space really does allow conversation, whereas in television, it's reporting, it's quick, it's fast, and it isn't as deep oftentimes. So this has been a real treat for me to just sometimes have these very long conversations where you do get into the weeds, and the weeds are important.
The weeds are important. In fact, I hope you're okay, actually, Ashley, if I ask you about, first off, and let me not bury the lead. I want to talk to you about the Lori Vallow Daybell case. I want to talk to you.
10 hours?
Day mom, right? If we have 10 hours. I've been editing the backstory, by the way, here in our Airbnb in Phoenix, Arizona for the last 3 days. So yeah, if you had 10 hours. But I do want to talk to you about that. But before we get there, I do just want to simply ask you how and where your interest in true crime has come from, because I also want to point out that you were a reporter on the Jodi Arias case, the Casey Anthony case. Those are just two of many cases you have covered deeply throughout the years. So tell me that, because I feel like everyone has a backstory there.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I go back to OJ. I'm of a certain generation. I covered OJ.
I remember OJ.
Yeah, and that wasn't even the beginning of my career. The very beginning of my career was the Exxon Valdez crash in Alaska. That's the crazy part. I go back that long when the drunk ship captain, ran aground and dropped all the oil in the beautiful, bays of Valdez, Alaska. Yeah, I mean, I do go back a long way, but Lauren, I was always general beat, and I remember making a decision early on in my career that I wanted to be general beat for a few reasons. I love current events, always did. I just loved them. And so I didn't want to pigeonhole into one kind of current event, like politics or business or true crime. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay very general. I also thought of it, and I don't know how I thought of it in my early 20s because I was a moron, that it was a good business decision to stay general beat because I would have more opportunities all over the map, including if I wanted to be an anchor or a host at some point, rather than just a reporter. I felt that I'd open a lot more doors having a lot more material under my belt than if I were just sort of myopically focusing in one genre. That was the way it was back in the 80s. But then, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, things began to change, and focused, branded journalists became more valuable. I mean, just imagine all the business people that you can name on the air because CNBC made them stars. Same thing with legal journalists. They became more valuable the more in depth and the more knowledgeable they were. And so that's when I started shifting my career into true crime.
Okay. And I want to point out to a few of our listeners that might not know this because they know you from Banfield and from Drop Dead Serious that you were in New York City when the World Trade Center collapsed, reporting. Like, you have done everything, and so I want to make that clear here because I've admired you for years, Ashley, and what you've done, and so again,
like around the block. If for the newer folks on, like younger folks on the podcast, I actually nearly died on 9/11. I was under that North Tower when it came down and had to scramble breaking windows to get to safety from the debris that was coming down. And then 9 days of standing on that pile reporting about the apocalypse, because that's really what it felt like. 9 days later, I was on a plane to Pakistan, and I didn't come home for a year. And then for the year after that, I was hopscotching every war zone, you can name. And I have been in every place that is a hotspot. So when we talk about Gaza, I spent some time in Gaza. I spent some weird time in Gaza with a hood over my head and, at gunpoint being marched into a field. I have been in Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran. I was held as a guest of the Iraqis if I didn't report appropriately, they said. I was held by the Hezbollah leader in Lebanon for 6 hours without a phone or a watch or in a locked room just to make sure I wasn't a ticking time bomb, literally a bomb that would go off and kill the leader of Hezbollah before I interviewed him. He's since been killed, by the way. So yeah, I have a very weird background on the way to true crime. I guess you could say I've been involved in global crime, and I've had to cover it from the ground.
Exactly, global crime. I mean, it's all crime. Terrorism is crime. And wow. Thank you for sharing a bit of your background. And so I guess I just really wanted to put that into perspective before we jump into a woman who has captivated both of us for years now. Over 5 years, you and I have been captivated by Vallow Daybell. Lori Daybell now, I guess, as she wants to be called, for the upcoming trial, her second trial here in Phoenix, Arizona.
But like Kanye, you can't shake a brand. So I'm just going Lori Vallow.
Yeah, I go back and forth. It's like when Prince, formerly known as Prince, I don't know what to say, but and I'm not sure either side of the family is excited. I don't think the Vallows are excited for her to be Lori Vallow. I don't think the Daybells are excited for her to be Lori Daybell. So.
Yeah, who wants to be stuck with that? That is a whole lot of mess. And captivated is one way looking at it. Perplexed, befuddled, all of the above, right? I think as anybody on the podcast right now who's a mom, you can't get over this story. Anybody on the podcast who's religious, you can't get over this story. Anybody on the podcast who's human, you can't get over this story. So there's a million reasons why it's hard to shape how and why all this happened.
Perplexed is a better way to say it too, because I have been perplexed, honestly, Ashley, for 5.5 years. Like, I almost, I get to come on your show on Banfield sometimes and you get to ask me questions, but honestly, I've been thinking, I want to ask Ashley questions. Like, knowing what you know, what is it about this woman and this case that has sort of drawn you in and left you perplexed?
Lots of levels, right? And a load of layers too. And I think the first is the obvious: who kills their kids? Who does that? What you better be in a state of psychosis that's provable. For me to be able to accept, okay, I understand it, like Andrea Yates level, right?
Right.
But she's not that. She's a whole lot of crazy. I mean, the whole cult business, she's a whole lot of crazy. And then, Lauren, we've seen a lot of results, deadly, horrifying results of cult madness. I'm not old enough to have been a reporter during Jim Jones in Guyana, but I was old enough to watch it as a kid and be so stunned that these people could drink Kool-Aid willingly and go to their deaths willingly. And then, of course, those who didn't were shot. But I think, I'm looking for that level of crazy with Lori Vallow, because that's the only way I could see doing the things that she has done, and B, she's accused of doing, right? We're moving ahead to 2 more trials, and we've already seen thrice now she's a murderer. So, yeah, number 1 is how do you kill your kids? Number 2, how do you kill your kids and then kind of come off as normal, right? Because to a lot of people, she was normal. They loved her. Her fellow cultists loved her. They couldn't wait to hear her pontificate for 45 minutes in their living room about absolute garbage. And they believed her. And they visited her. They came from far away to visit her. That's another thing I can't get over. How was she not so off-putting as a child murderer would be? That she had all these friends and had this great life. How did she attract 5 husbands? There's another one. Because many of us struggle to meet guys. Right? Like, what?
Luckily, I finally found one when I was 35, but it took 35 years, right?
And I found 2, but it was not easy, you know. But and then there's this whole idea that she is very swept up in how she looks and how she sounds. And how did she go from being, incompetent to even stand trial to so competent she'll defend herself in court? That's the other beguiling thing. It's just it's mind blowing. All of it.
It's true. Like when you don't think that this case can like get any weirder, Lori Vallow Daybell is about to defend herself. She's about to defend herself, and we're like, wait, what? No,
Actually, you know what? You just said that. A lot of news outlets, when you are covering a second trial, and I've done this a bunch, right? Phil Spector was tried twice. There were loads of people who've been tried twice. And on the second go round, there's not a lot of coverage. Karen Reed excluded. But there's not a lot of coverage. Phil Spector's second trial barely got covered, and he was convicted the second time round. And a lot of news outlets will not deliver assets to a second case because we don't think that there's as much appetite among the viewers. And we're not a charity. We're in a business. We have to get people. We have to know that people are going to want to watch the product we give them. So it's a little like prosecutors. You don't prosecute unless you know you're going to convict. But in the Lori Vallow case, this is different because, yeah, she's already a thrice convicted murderer who's going to spend a life no parole in prison. So why should we care about another murder? It's not going to make a difference in her life or ours. And yet, because this story took such a crazy shift where she's going to now talk in court, that's not something she did before. We can maybe get some insight into all these questions you and I have been bandying about for years.
Yeah, I think you're. I attended jury selection. I'm here in Phoenix, and one thing I noticed going back to how you said that she looks a certain way, that she looks normal. I think that's part of the big intrigue for me, or curiosity, or perplexing. Is I like your word. I'm going to go with that. Perplexing part of her is that she comes across pretty sane most of the time. She definitely had some explosive moments during jury selection. But she
sounds like an annoyed woman. She doesn't sound insane.
You don't think that she's thinking in her mind that she hasn't murdered anyone, that she's going to be exonerated and go on Dancing with the Stars, because that's what she's thinking.
Than everyone else. That's the other thing. She sounds like she's talking like she's smarter than everyone else in the world. That's maddening.
It is. I know it is maddening because you're like, yeah, it's maddening, and so. I know, have some self-awareness.
Yeah. Read the room, Lori. They all freeze.
Right. And I was walking around my new neighborhood outside my Airbnb, and a woman was asking about my podcast and what we were doing, and I was explaining, and she said, I saw her, the really pretty woman, the really beautiful woman. And then she said she's a murderer, and I thought, what? I think that's kind of what this is too, and she does look nice, I'll say, in her street clothes and her highlighted hair. She's looking more like the Lori Vallow we knew from the beginning, manipulating police officers.
What? I figured that out. How'd she get the highlights? Because her hair does look highlighted and
I know.
Pretty.
I think Keith asked her during the interview, and she said that she can buy bleach, and she's a hairdresser, so she knows how to pull that off.
Definitely knows how to pull it off. I just never imagined in a million years that you could get that kind of hair product. Because bleach, that's something you can kill someone with. If used the wrong way. I'm shocked that someone can get that kind of product and prison.
Maybe we need to double check with Keith. I think that's what Keith said, but maybe, I'll find out. If I could call Keith, I would, but I think
She's
that's
not,
what he said.
the court doesn't suffer the kind of blonde ambition that I have, which is I have to highlight like mad or my hair goes brown. She has roots that are just blonde roots. She just doesn't have platinum blonde roots, so she's lucky in that respect.
There you go. You're right. She's got this dark blonde. Will you be watching? As you pointed out, you're right. Like, I thought it was done. I thought this case was done. I went to both trials in Idaho. I thought, and by both, let me clarify, Lori's followed by Chad Daybell, the co-conspirator, also charged with the murders of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ. I thought it was done. I'm surprised I'm here for this. As you point out, I didn't know that this would be that big of a deal either. Yet here I am. So you're going to be following this. Are you intrigued by how this is going to go down?
Yeah, because I'm already intrigued by the pretrial motions and how she behaves. Once again, this is someone who thinks she's smarter than everyone else in the room. And I'm here to tell you, I've been at this business a long time, and I would never try to defend myself. There's no way that I could catch hearsay at the speedy, lightning quick way that you have to when you're litigating, when you're standing in that well, and you're cross-examining or you're even examining. There's no way I could do this job. There's no way. I don't have the depth. And again, it's been my career for the last 25 years. So the fact that she thinks just because she's been a murderer and has sat through a trial and pretrial that she's good enough to do this tells me just how dumb she really is. And so I want to see that on display. I want to see how dumb she is. You know the old expression, a man who's chosen himself or a lawyer has a fool for a client. It applies. It applies everywhere. And so I can't wait to see, how this manifests and the kinds of conversations that she has with the judge, because it's the poor judge who's going to be working overtime every day.
I'll say it, Dunning-Kruger. If you know, you know. If not, look it up, because that's exactly what I think of when I think of Lori. Yeah.
It will be really entertaining in an educational way for viewers to watch this, because everyone should know that this is a terrible idea. Defending yourself, no matter how smart you think you are, even if you're a lawyer, it's a terrible idea because you have a different lens when you are a defendant, even if you're a lawyer. But I always really enjoy, and I think you do too, it's why you do this job, I really enjoy learning more about jurisprudence. And in every case, I learn something new. And in every jurisdiction, I learn something new because everybody's different. All the laws are different, every state you go to. But in this particular case, you are going to hear from a judge who, like I said, is going to have to work overtime, schooling Lori constantly about why she needs to stop talking and how you're going nowhere with this. This might be the way you talk to your friends and how you argue with your friends, but this is not how it works on the record. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I know I'm going to learn a lot by watching her screw up.
Yeah, the judge already looks exhausted.
Very.
You are close to Kay and Larry Woodcock, two of the surviving victims in this case. They lost Charles, is Kay's brother, and JJ, of course, 7-year-old JJ is their grandchild that they lost, both to murder. How do you think it's going to be for them and this is the part that kind of breaks my heart. When Lori is up there questioning them, this person's been charged with murdering their grandchild.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons why this will be a big case, right, to watch. I've seen it before. I have seen killers cross-examining survivors, family members of the dead, of the victims. I've even seen attempted killers and rapists questioning their victims who survived their attempted murders. And it is horrendous. They need a lot of prep. Usually that comes from the prosecutors. Oftentimes they get their own lawyers too. But the prosecutors are effectively their lawyers, their protectors in this process, and their witnesses. And so it is a very painful thing to watch, but it is the right of every person accused in the Constitution to confront your accusers. It's just that normally it's your lawyers who do it. So there is that nice, there's that nice buffer that it is the accused lawyer who's doing that questioning. So when you represent yourself, you take that buffer away. and you just inflict so much pain and suffering. And by the way, that will not go unnoticed. That will not go unnoticed by a jury. It will not go unnoticed by a judge. When it comes to sentencing, if she's guilty, none of that will go unnoticed.
True. How she acts in front of the survivors of this horrendous multiple crimes. You're right.
Yeah, and then what she does outside the boundaries of legal jurisprudence, right? Because again, she's not a lawyer. She doesn't really know what she's doing. So her histrionics will count. That stuff counts against you if you're behaving in that way in a courtroom. Just like if you're sitting at defense table and you decide to, lash out and yell and scream, you'll be held in contempt of court. Just because you're at defense table doesn't mean you have free speech to yell. There are rules of decorum. And so all the things that she does that are outside what a lawyer is allowed to do, that will count against her.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think she could be held in contempt at some point?
Totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, if she's, once again, dumb enough, and I do believe she is, dumb enough to not heed the judge's instructions and warnings on multiple occasions, she could be. That said, I do know also that judges go to enormous lengths to protect the process, to protect the case, to protect the trial. Usually, they go way beyond the bounds of what our own patients would allow, so that they can protect Lori's rights, to continue a trial and not waste all of the assets and expenditures of the state by having to declare a mistrial or having to deal with an appeal, because she will argue, well, I got sent to the Huskow because I was yelling, and that precluded my fair rights as a defendant. She can do those things. Will she win them? No. But again, it's more money, more time, more problems.
And what about, I have to ask you, this rack belt? She does not want to wear this rack.
Now, what just happened? Hold on, y'all. Let me find it. Let me find it. God, where was I? Okay, hold on.
She does not want to wear this rack belt, this stun belt. I have visions, Ashley, of what could possibly happen in the courtroom if all of a sudden she gets feisty, because we've already seen it, and the stun belt happens. I mean, I can't imagine that this is why she doesn't want to wear it, right? Like, she is so adamant about not wearing this. I'm like, what are you afraid of, Lori? What are you afraid of?
I have a theory. I think she doesn't like the way it makes her look, because she wants to wear, she gets to wear street clothes, right? And all defendants who appear before a jury get to wear street clothes, and more we're seeing that they're getting to wear street clothes in pretrial hearings with no jury because of the media. So that's going out to the jury pool. They don't want to be seen in orange jumpsuits because it makes you look guilty. So she wants to look, svelte and pretty, and that stun belt will make her look chubby and chunky and won't allow her to wear, mid waistcoats, whatever it is, whatever her sartorial choices are. But I want to say this about that belt. I don't think anyone's trying to be nasty to Lori. I don't think anyone thinks that Lori's gonna, attack somebody on the bench or on the witness stand, or go crazy or try to run out the back door. I don't think they think that about her. Although I would never put anything aside for Lori. But when you are in a courtroom as a defendant, there are bailiffs and security officers who are present. The defendant does not get to get up and walk around the courtroom during proceedings. So you can take the handcuffs and shackles off the defendant so that the jury doesn't see the defendant as a prisoner already, because that is, pejorative in their minds. But Lori is a lawyer, so she gets to stand up and walk around. So she can't enjoy the same treatment as a seated defendant can. There has to be some method of making sure that everyone in the courtroom is protected from Lori. And there may actually be something on the books in Arizona saying that if a defendant, repeatedly gets up from his or her seat, they have to wear something that is restraining that does not appear visibly to the jurors, like handcuffs and leg shackles. So that's my opinion of why they have had to put a belt on Lori, because she's a defendant who gets to move about the cabin freely, and they need some kind of insurance policy against anything that might happen with this.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Ashley, I know that you need to run. We've got you in between your busy broadcasting schedule. You're about to go do some live hits. Before you go, though, um, this is right across the hall, I learned, from the Jodi Arias trial, which I did not attend. You attended the Jodi Arias trial. So I don't know if you have visions of that courtroom, but it's allegedly pretty identical to that one. So I just want to put it up there, too.
I mean, it's poetic, but maybe not surprising. I will say this: the Arias trial was in the summer. It was 110 degrees.
Yeah.
It was horrible. That was a tough assignment. And I'll just tell you one anecdote that's a little off the subject, but because I was hosting, um, live shots all day long and a show, I was basically on camera all day long. And we found a position in a parking garage adjacent to the courthouse. So behind me, you would see the courthouse. And I was in this corner of this parking garage, right on the street corner. And I was there for a couple of weeks at least. I mean, I can't remember how long it was. It felt like the entire summer. So I would post up there, and I would do my shows from there. And then, because it was 110 degrees, people were not going to come to my location and be a guest. We would do what you and I are doing right now. Yeah. We would do side by side and meet people digitally, or do satellite. And one of the guests I had on the show was Nancy Grace, because Nancy obviously is a queen of true crime as well, and she was very heavily invested. And she also had a mobile position, but hers was a studio. It was like one of those mobile, trailers that has a studio in them. Nancy, unbeknownst to me, had parked her studio truck. So imagine me looking at you right now, and I'm looking at the camera. She had parked her studio truck down past my camera, because there's a street. There's a street right here, and there's a street right here, and the courthouse is well, let me see, right there. So she had parked her truck down the street that I'm on, and so her view is the same view that I have. She's just 300 or 200 yards down the street, but she's got the same backdrop. Okay. She's farther away from the courthouse than I am, but she's got the courthouse.
She's got the wide shot.
Yeah, she's got the court. She's sitting in her. But I didn't know where she had her mobile studio, because I was in my place all day, every day, and I didn't go 200 yards that way because it's away from the courthouse. So I'd never seen where she was. So I do a live shot with Nancy, and it's all normal. We talk about the case. We talk about whatever, and at some point in the live shot, a bus goes through my background, right? Because I'm on a street behind, and I'm on a street beside me, and a bus goes through my background. And because she has the same background that I do, it goes through her background too. So it starts at her background and goes through my background. Okay. And the people at Jon Stewart's Daily Show, when he was still doing 5 days a week on the Daily Show, they assumed that she was standing right beside me, and I was pretending that she wasn't there. Okay. I was pretending to look straight at a camera, and she was looking straight at a camera. And they made a huge joke about, she's standing right effing beside you. Just turn your face and look at her and ask. And then I remember being so annoyed by it. It was funny AF, right? It really was funny. But in television terms, it wasn't true what he was saying.
Right.
And I was completely lambasted for something I didn't do. I didn't do anything wrong, and I didn't do anything untoward. And I'd had a conversation with Nancy Grace from her studio and my studio, or my outdoor location. It just so happened she had the same backdrop that I did, and it looked digitally like we were in the same place. So that was a big memory of mine from the Jodi Arias trial, because that went viral everywhere, and I was made to be humiliated by it.
If it makes you feel better, my husband John and I do split screen every day from our own home, and people are like, "Are you guys in the same room?" I'm like, we're not in the same room, but we are in the same house in different rooms doing. It's just easier. It's just easier. So
People get it now, Lauren. People get it now because since COVID, now we all do Zoom. We've all met on. We've all done multiple Zoom or whatever platform you choose. Microsoft Teams, whatever. We've all done. And the reality is that single shots are single shots. And when you go out to a double shot, sometimes it doesn't work. You don't have the mics, you don't have the width, you don't have the space, you don't have the backdrop gets crazy. And so you do these single shots. And so it's not weird to anybody today. I think the people at the Daily Show would have not thought a thing about it back then. Now, today, but
Right.
they imagined, wrongly so, that we were standing beside each other and ignoring each other.
One last question. I know you have to go. What's another case you're really looking forward to? When you talked about viral things, I know that your interview while covering Luigi with the prisoners went viral. That was fascinating. I don't know. Are you going to be following Luigi, or what other cases are you really into right now?
So I will be following Luigi, as you will be too. I mean, this is a huge story. It's taken on legs of its own for cultural and social reasons, not so much for the legal mystery of it, right? I don't think anybody's feeling too whodunit about this. But the fact that it's a federal case makes me frustrated because they typically will not allow any cameras, and that is frustrating because I feel like, and look, I know I have a dog in the fight, but I feel like there should be a camera in every courtroom because it's our system. It doesn't belong to the government. We are the government. It is our system. In Iraq, they used to just throw hoods over people's heads and pull them out of their homes, and that was the last you'd ever see of them. And there was no open system. Oh, he was convicted. Oh, you weren't there? Yeah, sorry. He's in a gulag. You'll never see him again. That's not us. We have one of the most envied systems of justice in the world. And the more we put gag orders and kick cameras out of court, the less we are transparent about our system of justice, the less we can trust what's really happening in there.
I agree.
And to tell me that, oh, well, you can walk into the courtroom. No, you can't. No, you can't. It's a big country. So in that respect, I'm frustrated by the federal system. I'm very frustrated by the Supreme Court now allowing audio. Great. But at some point, they should allow video. They should allow the Americans in to see the Americans' own process. So I will be frustrated by that part. But I will cover it, and I will absolutely, do what we can to bring that story to life, even if it has to be courtroom sketches, which drive me bananas. But the Luigi thing also is a fascinating story. Outside of the legal case, it's a fascinating story. And, I think I'm probably like you in that I'm appalled that people are cheering and celebrating his father who was murdered, shot in the back by someone who ran away and hid. Like, let's not forget that the hero, if Luigi is the killer, the hero here, aren't you brave? You shot a man in the back and then you ran away. That's not a hero.
No, two little children, two little boys without a father.
Yeah, two kids, my kid's age almost, my two boys' age, and I don't care what you think about his job. You can protest that in this country. You're allowed to, well, for now, you're allowed to protest those things in this country, and you can start a movement, and you can go to your congressman, and you can go on Capitol Hill. That's what we allow in this country. Can't do that in a lot of countries. I would do. But the way we don't do things is the way other people do things in other countries. They do summary justice all the time in the square with a machete. They do stuff like that. We've always prided ourselves that we don't do that. Even if our base instinct wants to do that, even if you want to take Chris Watts and behead him, we don't do it that way. And we are the envy of the world because of it. So I wish that more people would stop giving into your base instincts of hating someone who looks so incredibly guilty and do what we do in America, and that is afford them every single defense until they're guilty and then look.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. I couldn't have said it better. I appreciate that so much. And this is why I love these conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, and they're important conversations. We can't have them for this length of time and depth, usually on a 30-minute show or a 1-hour show, or even in a docuseries. You can't always do that, but you can in the podcast world, and I think that's why I'm absolutely loving it. And I really appreciate you asking me to come on. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Where can we find your podcast?
Drop Dead Serious, girl. So dropdeadserious.com. You can find it on any of the platforms, Apple, Spotify, Audio Boom, everywhere you get your podcast, you can find it. And I'm also, I've got a companion YouTube show as well that if you want to see the pictures I'm talking about. And by the way, I say that because I launched my Drop Dead Serious podcast with a 6-part series. It's called Uncle Peter, and it's about a guy who is the most prolific serial sex offender in the world. If you put Epstein and Cosby and Diddy and Weinstein all together, Peter Nygaard would dwarf them in numbers of age, right? He is unbelievable. He's a billionaire, almost reached a billionaire, right? He's a clothing magnate. He is a rags to riches story. He looks like Fabio and Liberace if you blend the two of them, and then add Hugh Hefner to it. That's Peter Nygaard. And he sexually assaulted, molested, raped, and was accused of doing terrible things to thousands of women. And I grew up with him. He was Uncle Peter. So there's that. Yeah, he was my best friend's uncle, and I knew him back then in the 80s, and my mom knew him back then. And Lauren, the most amazing thing is being able to look back at that era and see how people like that got a pass. Because they did. They got a pass. They got a pass from everyone. They got a pass from police and governments and society and friends. And they even got a pass from the women because the women were too afraid to say anything and thought it must be their fault. And so looking back at everything through the eyes of my best friend, who sits with me for 9 hours to recount the whole family side of the story, it was really, really shocking. She also opened his vault, and I got all the filthy pictures and all the naked parties. And he did these things in the Bahamas where he had like a $75 million Swiss Family Robinson home.
Wow. Wow.
He had thousands of people as, partiers and swinger parties. He had Academy Awards ceremonies for who effed the most people during the swingers weekend. And these like dessert buffets of naked women all covered in dessert with all the party goers eating off it. Just crazy stuff. And that's why I say the companion YouTube series is worth watching, because I got all these things that Angela gave me about the family growing up, and then his crazy parties and the things that he did. The naked women and body paint and feathers running around with, these Caribbean bands playing. It was wild, just wild. So that's Uncle Peter, and that's on the Drop Dead Serious channel, and I recommend taking a look because they're out there. People like that are out there. By the way, he's sitting in a prison cell in Canada right now, but he's got 3 more trials ahead of him.
That was
one of them is
okay. That was going to be my next question. Please tell me he's somewhere where he needs to be. Okay.
He's fighting it. He's fighting it, and he's 83 years old, and he's going downhill, but he's fighting it, and he's still got Montreal as another legal front. He's got Winnipeg as a legal front. He's got New York City as a legal front. And then 135 people signed on to a class action lawsuit against him, including, we believe, 2 of the anonymous people of his own children, who he made men of. He made men of them by sending in his girlfriend when they were just young teens.
Well, one thing you do is investigative journalism. You do it right. So I will be tuning in.
Right back at you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ash. All right, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. What is today? Thursday? I've lost track. And
I know, 3 day feels like it's already a 7-day week.
yeah, and I hope that we'll be able to chat Vallow Daybell trial in the upcoming week.
Definitely. I can't wait for opening statements. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's going to be blockbuster.
That's it.